Most drivers think their normal habits are perfectly safe for their vehicles. But what if I told you that most driving habits practiced daily will leave your car destroyed after just a few years of ownership? Habits that seem completely harmless, but quickly turn into expensive mechanical disasters. In this video, we've got the 7 most destructive driving habits, ranked from least to most expensive, based on real repair costs and expert analysis. And trust me, some of these choices might shock you. From fuel choices that seem logical to maintenance schedules that feel reasonable, most habits are riddled with hidden problems that'll ruin your ownership experience. And here's the kicker. The #1 habit on this list is so common, 40% of drivers do it without realizing they're destroying thousands of dollars in components. Stick with me to the end, because this isn't just a warning, it's a guide to driving habits that won't bankrupt you. Miss this, and you could be stuck with a reliable car that you accidentally destroyed through everyday driving mistakes. Let's start with number 7, and this one proves that even the fuel you choose can destroy your engine. Number 7, using the wrong fuel type. This habit seems harmless because most gas stations offer multiple fuel grades, but using the wrong fuel type can cause engine damage that costs thousands to repair. The most common mistake is using regular fuel in vehicles that require premium, or even worse, accidentally putting diesel in a gasoline engine. Premium fuel vehicles, like turbocharged models, need high-octane fuel to prevent detonation. When you use regular 87-octane fuel in a truck like the 2017 to 2020 Ford F-150 EcoBoost with the 3.5-liter engine, you're asking for trouble. These engines require 91-octane fuel to operate safely under boost conditions. Using lower-octane fuel causes engine knock, which is the sound of fuel detonating at the wrong time in the combustion cycle. This creates shock waves that can damage pistons, connecting rods, and even crack engine blocks. The repair cost for detonation damage can easily exceed $5,000. The science behind octane ratings is simple but critical. Higher octane fuel resists detonation under pressure, which is exactly what turbocharged and high-compression engines need. When you use fuel with insufficient octane rating, the fuel ignites before the spark plug fires, creating destructive pressure waves that hammer internal engine components. Modern engines have knock sensors that can detect detonation and retard timing to prevent damage. But this protection comes at the cost of reduced power and increased fuel consumption. Drivers who consistently use low-octane fuel in premium-required engines often notice decreased performance and higher fuel bills, not realizing they're also risking expensive engine damage. The worst-case scenario is misfueling, where someone accidentally puts diesel fuel in a gasoline engine or vice versa. Diesel fuel in a gasoline engine can cause the engine to seize completely, requiring total replacement at cost between $5,000 and $10,000. This mistake is more common than you might think, with AutoZone reporting that 20% of U.S. drivers have used incorrect fuel at some point. Consumer Reports specifically advises using the recommended fuel type for EcoBoost models, noting that using regular fuel not only reduces efficiency, but also risks expensive engine damage. The few dollars saved at the pump can cost thousands in repairs down the road. Number 6, neglecting regular maintenance. This habit might seem obvious, but it's incredibly common and devastatingly expensive. AAA reports that 35% of U.S. drivers skip recommended maintenance, leading to repair costs that are 50% higher than necessary. The mentality of "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" can destroy modern vehicles that depend on precise maintenance schedules. Oil changes are the most commonly skipped maintenance item, and the consequences can be catastrophic. Modern engines have tighter tolerances and smaller oil passages that clog easily when oil breaks down. Skipping oil changes on a 2015 to 2020 Chevrolet Silverado with the 5.3-liter V8 can cause lifter failures that cost between $3,000 and $5,000 to repair. The chemistry of engine oil degradation is more complex than most drivers realize. Motor oil doesn't just get dirty, it actually breaks down at the molecular level due to heat, oxidation, and contamination. As oil ages, it loses its ability to lubricate effectively and begins forming sludge deposits that can clog critical oil passages. The 2015 Chevrolet Silverado received a reliability score of just 25 out of 100 from Consumer Reports, largely due to engine problems that occurred when owners neglected maintenance. The active fuel management system in these engines is particularly sensitive to oil quality, and dirty oil can cause lifter failures that require complete engine teardown. Tire rotations are another commonly skipped service that can cost hundreds of dollars in premature tire replacement. Uneven wear patterns from skipped rotations can force you to replace tires at 30,000 miles instead of 60,000 miles, effectively doubling your tire costs over the life of the vehicle. Front tires typically wear faster due to steering and braking forces, while rear tires wear more evenly. Transmission fluid changes are often overlooked because many manufacturers claim their fluids are lifetime, but this assumption can destroy your transmission. Heat and contamination break down transmission fluid over time, and neglecting changes can lead to transmission failure, costing $3,000 to $5,000. The term lifetime fluid actually refers to the expected life of the transmission under ideal conditions, not the vehicle's actual lifetime. Air filter replacement is frequently ignored until engines start running poorly. A clogged air filter restricts airflow to the engine, causing reduced power and increased fuel consumption. In extreme cases, debris can bypass a severely clogged filter and damage internal engine components. The $15 to $30 cost of a new air filter can prevent hundreds of dollars in fuel system cleaning and engine repairs. Number 5. Aggressive driving, sudden acceleration, and braking. Aggressive driving feels satisfying in the moment, but it accelerates wear on virtually every component of your vehicle. This habit is particularly damaging in performance vehicles, where drivers feel encouraged to use their car's capabilities, not realizing they're shortening its lifespan with every hard acceleration. Rapid acceleration stresses engine components beyond their normal operating parameters. Hard acceleration forces pistons, connecting rods, and bearings to work under extreme loads that cause accelerated wear. The piston rings that seal combustion chambers can wear prematurely, leading to oil consumption and reduced compression that requires engine rebuilds. The physics of aggressive acceleration create forces that engines aren't designed to handle repeatedly. When you floor the accelerator, combustion pressures spike dramatically, creating stress concentrations in pistons and connecting rods. These components are designed with safety margins, but repeated abuse can exceed their fatigue limits and cause catastrophic failure. Engine oil temperature also spikes during hard acceleration, breaking down lubricating properties and forming deposits that can clog oil passages. High-performance driving generates more heat than cooling systems can effectively manage, leading to thermal stress that warps components and destroys gaskets. The 2010 to 2015 Dodge Ram 1500 with Hemi engines became notorious for premature engine wear when driven aggressively. J.D. Power rated the 2014 Ram 1500 at just 3 out of 5 for reliability, citing wear patterns that correlated with aggressive driving habits. Owners who drove these trucks hard reported engine problems before 100,000 miles. Hard braking is equally damaging, causing brake pads and rotors to wear much faster than normal. Aggressive drivers can burn through brake pads in 15,000 miles instead of the typical 40,000 to 60,000 miles. The heat generated by hard braking can warp rotors, requiring expensive replacement of both pads and rotors simultaneously. Car and driver research shows that aggressive driving can reduce overall engine life by up to 15%. This means an engine that should last 200,000 miles might only make it to 170,000 miles when subjected to constant aggressive driving. The cumulative cost of premature component replacement can easily exceed $2,000 over the vehicle's lifetime. Tire wear from aggressive driving is also extreme. Hard acceleration and cornering can reduce tire life by 30 to 40%, forcing drivers to replace tires more frequently. Performance tires are particularly expensive, with sets costing $800 to $1,500 for many vehicles. Suspension components also suffer under aggressive driving conditions. Hard cornering and sudden direction changes stress bushings, ball joints, and shock absorbers beyond their design limits. These components can fail prematurely, creating safety hazards and expensive repair bills that often exceed $1,000 per corner. Number 4, overloading the vehicle. This habit is particularly common among truck and SUV owners who buy these vehicles specifically for their hauling capabilities. However, exceeding payload or towing capacity puts enormous stress on engines, transmissions, and suspension components that weren't designed to handle the extra load. The 2015 to 2020 Ford F-150 has payload capacities ranging from 1,900 to 3,270 pounds, depending on configuration. When owners exceed these limits, they're asking their trucks to do jobs they weren't engineered to handle. Overloading by even 500 pounds can cause transmission overheating, especially when towing uphill or in hot weather. Vehicle manufacturers determine payload and towing capacities through extensive testing that considers every component's limitations. The frame, suspension, brakes, cooling system, and drivetrain are all sized to handle specific loads with adequate safety margins. Exceeding these limits removes those safety margins and creates potential failure points throughout the vehicle. Transmission failure from overloading is particularly expensive because it often occurs suddenly and without warning. Automatic transmissions generate enormous amounts of heat when working beyond their capacity, and this heat breaks down transmission fluid and damages internal components. The transmission simply overheats and stops working, leaving drivers stranded and facing repair bills between $3,000 and $5,000. Consumer Reports has documented reliability issues in overloaded F-150s, noting that transmission problems correlate strongly with exceeding payload ratings. The complex electronic controls in modern transmissions can't compensate for loads that exceed the mechanical limitations of gears, clutches, and hydraulic systems. Engine damage from overloading typically manifests as overheating, which can warp cylinder heads or blow head gaskets. When an engine overheats under heavy load, the repair costs can easily exceed $4,000. The cooling system simply cannot handle the extra heat generated by an overworked engine struggling to move excessive weight. Suspension damage is another expensive consequence of overloading. Leaf springs, shock absorbers, and suspension bushings wear prematurely when subjected to weights beyond their design limits. Owners on F-150 forum frequently report suspension failures that correlate with heavy hauling, with repair costs ranging from $1,000 to $3,000. The brake system also suffers under overloading. Heavier loads require more braking force, which generates more heat and causes faster wear of brake pads and rotors. Overloaded vehicles can burn through brake components in half the normal time, doubling maintenance costs for the braking system. Tire failures from overloading can be particularly dangerous because they often occur at highway speeds. Tires have load ratings that correspond to vehicle specifications, and exceeding these ratings can cause catastrophic blowouts. Beyond the safety risk, tire replacement costs multiply when vehicles consistently carry excessive loads. Number 3, resting hand on gear shift, manual transmissions. This habit affects a smaller percentage of drivers since manual transmissions are less common in the US. But for those who drive stick shifts, keeping a hand on the gear shift can cause expensive transmission damage. Many drivers rest their hand on the shifter without realizing they're applying pressure to internal transmission components. The gear shift is connected to shift forks inside the transmission that move synchronizer rings and engage gears. When you rest your hand on the shifter, you're applying constant pressure to these components, causing them to wear prematurely. This pressure prevents the synchronizers from disengaging completely, leading to grinding and difficult shifting. The 1995 to 2004 Toyota Tacoma with manual transmission became known for premature transmission wear among owners who rested their hands on the shifter. Forums like Tacoma World document numerous cases of owners facing transmission rebuilds costing $1,500 to $3,000 due to this seemingly innocent habit. Synchronizer rings are precision machine components that allow smooth gear changes by matching the speed of gears before they engage. When these components wear prematurely from constant pressure, they can no longer synchronize properly, causing grinding noises and eventually preventing gear engagement entirely. Mechanics at AutoZone report that this habit can shorten transmission life by 20 to 30%. A transmission that should last 200,000 miles might only survive 140,000 to 160,000 miles when subjected to constant shifter pressure. The cumulative damage isn't immediately obvious, making this habit particularly insidious. The repair process for worn synchronizers requires complete transmission disassembly, making labor costs extremely high even for relatively simple component replacement. Many owners discover that transmission rebuild costs exceed their vehicle's value, effectively totaling cars that could have provided years more service. But here's where these habits get really expensive for car owners. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed because the next few habits can destroy major components that cost more than many people's monthly rent. Number 2, ignoring warning lights. This habit is shockingly common, with J.D. Power reporting that 40% of U.S. drivers ignore dashboard warning lights. The mentality seems to be that if the car still runs, the problem can't be that serious. This assumption leads to some of the most expensive repair bills in automotive history. The check engine light is the most commonly ignored warning, often because it can indicate anything from a loose gas cap to serious engine problems. However, ignoring this light can lead to catastrophic damage when minor issues escalate into major failures. A simple oxygen sensor failure can cascade into catalytic converter damage, costing $1,500 to $2,500. The 2010 to 2015 Toyota Camry provides a perfect example of how ignored warning lights destroy vehicles. Consumer Reports gave the 2011 Camry a low reliability score of 30 out of 100, partly due to engine damage that occurred when owners ignored check engine lights indicating oxygen sensor problems. Oil pressure warning lights are particularly dangerous to ignore because they indicate immediate threats to engine survival. When oil pressure drops, engine bearings and other moving parts lose lubrication and can seize within minutes. Ignoring an oil pressure light can turn a $200 oil pump repair into a $5,000 engine replacement. Temperature warning lights indicate overheating that can warp cylinder heads or blow head gaskets if not addressed immediately. Many drivers continue driving when they see these lights, thinking they can make it to their destination. This decision often converts a $300 thermostat replacement into a $3,000 head gasket repair. Forums like Toyota Nation are filled with horror stories from owners who ignored warning lights and faced massive repair bills. One common scenario involves drivers ignoring check engine lights for months, only to discover that what started as a $150 oxygen sensor problem has escalated into catalytic converter failure, costing $2,000 or more. The financial impact of ignored warning lights extends beyond immediate repair costs. Vehicles with check engine lights often fail emissions testing, preventing registration renewal until expensive repairs are completed. This can leave drivers unable to legally operate their vehicles until they address problems that could have been fixed inexpensively if caught early. Modern vehicles have sophisticated diagnostic systems that provide early warning of developing problems. An OBD2 scanner, costing less than $50, can help drivers understand what warning lights mean and prioritize repairs before minor issues become major disasters. And now, the #1 driving habit that's destroying cars across America. A practice so common that most drivers don't even realize they're doing it. Number 1, riding the brakes. Riding the brakes takes the top spot because it's incredibly common, particularly damaging, and often unconscious. This habit involves keeping slight pressure on the brake pedal while driving, especially during downhill driving or stop-and-go traffic. Many drivers develop this habit without realizing how much damage it causes to their vehicle's braking system. The most obvious damage is accelerated wear on brake pads, rotors, and calipers. Normal brake pads should last 40,000 to 60,000 miles, but drivers who ride their brakes can burn through pads in as little as 15,000 miles. The constant friction generates heat that breaks down pad material and warps rotors, requiring expensive replacement of the entire braking system. The physics of brake operation depends on intermittent contact between pads and rotors. When drivers ride their brakes, they create continuous contact that generates heat without effective stopping power. This heat buildup is the root cause of virtually all brake-related damage, from warped rotors to glazed pads that lose their friction properties. The 2015 to 2020 Honda Civic provides a perfect example of how this habit destroys vehicles. Consumer Reports documented frequent brake replacements in urban-driven Civics, with owners reporting brake pad replacement every 15,000 miles in heavy traffic conditions. The repair costs range from $300 to $800 per axle, making this an expensive habit. Overheating brakes create even more serious problems than accelerated wear. When brakes overheat from constant use, the rotors can warp, creating vibrations that make the vehicle unsafe to drive. Warped rotors require replacement rather than resurfacing, significantly increasing repair costs. The metal in brake rotors expands unevenly when overheated, creating permanent distortion that can't be corrected. Brake fade is the most dangerous consequence of riding the brakes. When brake components overheat, they lose their ability to generate friction, meaning the brakes simply stop working effectively. This creates a safety hazard that can lead to accidents, particularly on long downhill grades where brake fade is most likely to occur. The chemical composition of brake pads changes when exposed to excessive heat. Modern brake pads use organic compounds that break down at high temperatures, creating glazed surfaces that can't grip rotors effectively. Once pads become glazed, they must be replaced even if they have plenty of material remaining. AAA research shows that riding the brakes increases overall maintenance costs by 20 to 30% over the vehicle's lifetime. For a vehicle driven 150,000 miles, this habit can add $1,500 to $2,000 in unnecessary brake repairs. The cumulative cost makes this one of the most expensive driving habits. Caliper damage is another expensive consequence of riding the brakes. Constant pressure causes brake calipers to stick, preventing proper pad retraction and causing uneven wear. Stuck calipers require replacement at costs exceeding $400 per wheel, and they often cause additional damage to rotors and pads. The habit is particularly problematic in stop-and-go traffic, where drivers keep light pressure on the brake pedal for extended periods. This continuous contact generates heat without providing effective braking, creating the worst possible scenario for brake component longevity. Urban drivers are especially susceptible to this problem, with forums like Civic X documenting numerous cases of premature brake failure. Engine braking provides a simple solution to this expensive habit. By downshifting or using the transmission's lower gears on hills, drivers can reduce speed without using the brakes continuously. This technique not only extends brake life, but also improves fuel economy by reducing the energy wasted through brake friction. Modern vehicles with manual mode or paddle shifters make engine braking easier than ever before. Now that you know these 7 expensive habits to avoid, watch my video on 13 things you're doing wrong every time you drive and don't know it, to discover even more hidden mistakes that are costing you money. While these 7 habits destroy your car mechanically, those 13 driving errors create safety risks and legal problems you never saw coming.